There was blood on almost every surface of the small bedroom, just a stone's throw from Baker Street Station, and the fatal attack suffered by Marina Koppel shocked even the most experienced of detectives. And as the years went by, it appeared the killer had quite literally got away with murder, except for one mistake he made, which would eventually lead to his capture. We pick up today's story on the 8th of August 1994, when antiques dealer David Koppel was becoming concerned about his wife as he couldn't make contact with her. They met not long after mum of two Marina moved to the UK from Colombia when she was just 24. When we pick up the story, 39-year-old Marina worked as a masseur and sex worker during the week from her flat in York Mansions, Chiltern Street, which is in the Marylebone area of central London, not too far from Baker Street Station. Marina sent most of the money she earned to her children and nephew, who were being cared for by family in South America, with the hope that she could provide them with a better life. Then Marina spent most weekends with David, who was 15 years her senior, at their home in Northampton. Now, David wasn't exactly happy with Marina's choice of how she made money during the week, and it did cause tension sometimes, but he accepted it, and the couple were generally very happy. On the 8th of August, he tried calling from about 3 o'clock, and when by 9 o'clock, Marina still wasn't answering the phone, he became increasingly concerned for what might have happened. It was most unlike her. And so he got in his car and he drove down to London. It was about 11:30 p.m. when David arrived, and using his key, he let himself into the flat where everything was eerily quiet. He went from room to room looking for his wife, and it was when he went into the second bedroom that his worst nightmare was realised. Marina's lifeless body was wrapped in bedding, and there was blood everywhere. It was clear even on first glance that Marina had suffered a violent death. David called 999, and the police and scenes of crime experts were soon on the scene, assessing what had happened and getting the investigation underway in those often crucial early hours after a murder has taken place. Marina had been the victim of a terrible attack. She'd been stabbed over 140 times in the neck, back and chest. Her blood was on the floor, the bedding, the walls of the bedroom and the furniture. It looked as though Marina had done her very best to fight off her attacker, as she had defensive knife injuries on her hands and arms. The forensic pathologist said it would have taken well over 2 minutes to inflict all those injuries suffered by Marina, and that her killer had continued to stab her even after she was clearly dead. When Marina was found, she was wearing only black lingerie, the clothing she would have been wearing if she was expecting one of her clients. The flat was secure and there was no sign of forced entry, so detectives immediately suspected the killer was someone buying her services who she'd been expecting. But the mobile phone and the diaries she used to manage her appointments were gone, along with the murder weapon, presumably stolen by the murderer. Detectives looked at Marina's last days. David told them he'd argued with his wife about her work a few days before, prompting him to travel home alone and not spend that weekend with his wife. Did this make David a suspect? Little else is known of Marina's movements until the evening of August the 7th, 1994, when Marina had entered a poker tournament at the Victoria Casino, a place where Marina could meet wealthy clients as well as play the game. She left at about 4 a.m. and met a client at a Heathrow hotel before returning back to Marylebone. According to David, Marina meeting business people flying into London and selling them sex wasn't unusual. Most of her clients were higher-end business people, doctors and lawyers. Then the last confirmed sighting of Marina alive was the next day, the day of the killing, when she visited the Midland Bank on Baker Street at about 1:42 p.m. At 2:45 p.m, she called her son Javier in Colombia when she sounded well and said she was having a quiet day. And this was the last time anybody heard from her. Marina's bank card was stolen from her flat and used at a cash point in nearby St John's Wood to withdraw cash shortly after the murder, and 3 times in the next 2 days, with the person clearly having gained knowledge of her PIN. This was still the very early days of DNA, but those at the scene were hopeful of what breakthroughs in science could bring in the coming years, and so they were very careful with the evidence they found at the crime scene, knowing this could be crucial evidence in the months and years to come. They recovered Marina's ring, a brown shopping bag found at the flat, and experts also took a print of a bare left foot that had made an impression in blood on a skirting board at the crime scene. There was a fingerprint found on the bag, and this was identified as belonging to 21-year-old Sandeep Patel. He worked nearby at his dad's shop, which was called Sherlock Holmes News in Baker Street. But as Sandeep worked at the shop, it wasn't a surprise his print was on a bag that he'd handled, and he wasn't treated as a suspect. Although there was no shortage of information passed to the detectives working on the case after numerous appeals to the public, that vital lead, that piece of evidence they were looking for, just wasn't forthcoming. And as is the way in policing and real life, the Met couldn't afford to have so many officers working on this case, so as new cases opened, officers moved away. And although the case was never formally closed, it wasn't being actively worked on. The evidence was, though, still regularly reviewed, and when this was done in 2008, a single hair was found stuck to Marina's ring. But it wasn't until 2022 when scientists were able to use new techniques to obtain a DNA profile from it. The hair still had its root intact, so it wasn't just a piece or shaft of hair, it's the presence of a root which makes all the difference. And it turned out that there was a root on a piece of hair from that ring, and the DNA was obtained from it. This DNA turned out to belong to Sandeep Patel. His DNA had been added to the DNA database as a result of a conviction for actual bodily harm in September 2013 after he punched his girlfriend. During the original investigation in 1994, Patel had not been a suspect as there was a very good reason for his fingerprints being on the bag found, and this meant that his footprints had not been taken. But they were following the discovery of his DNA on the hair found at the scene, and these footprints, they too match Patel. In 2023, 51-year-old Patel of Finchley Road, northwest London, close to where Marina's bank card was used, was arrested, and he told police he had no recollection of Marina Koppel or her flat. "I have no idea how my fingerprint came to be on this carrier bag, or how a hair of mine was present," he said during a police interview. Patel, who had been a student at the time of the murder, with no convictions at the time, continued to protest his innocence and insist that he was not responsible for killing Marina. But the police didn't believe him, and Patel was charged with murder. His trial took place at the Old Bailey, and Patel exercised his right not to give evidence at the trial. But when the jury returned from their deliberations of 3 hours and 10 minutes, they gave their judgment, which was he was guilty of murder. Sobbing could be heard in the public gallery, and Patel looked stunned, he looked incredulous at the verdict as he too looked at the public gallery. In a victim impact statement read out in court, Marina's son Javier said, "It is not easy for me to relive the saddest moment of my life after 29 years. I'm convinced that my mum had a lot of life to live still. It was not her time, and this is very painful. It tears my very soul. I hope to be able to close this chapter and to remember my mother how she was, the best mother in the world." At the sentencing hearing the following day, Patel took the cowardly course of action and refused to attend or to even watch via video link. Once again, as we know, this is another way that those convicted of a crime stop the families from seeing justice being done. And it's another demonstration of Patel's total lack of remorse. A point that was noted by the judge in this case. The judge said he could not be sure there was a financial motive to the crime, or that it involved sadistic conduct, or that it was motivated by sexual conduct. However, he said he had a strong suspicion that Patel killed Marina because of, and I quote, "shame and embarrassment at your sexual performance." He continued, "There is nothing to suggest that you went to the flat with the intention of murdering Ms. Koppel. You went there to avail yourself of her sexual services. Whilst I cannot be sure that you brought a knife to the scene, I can be sure that at some stage you left the bedroom to obtain a knife and then went back into the bedroom to assault Miss Koppel." The judge then sentenced him using guidelines that were in place when the crime occurred in 1994, and Patel was told that he would go to jail for at least 19 years. After the trial concluded, Marina's sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Mary and Martin Koppel, paid tribute to Marina, saying the following: "Marina Koppel, our sister-in-law, was extremely bright, highly intelligent and charismatic. She saw good in her family and everyone she met. She wanted to give her family everything they needed, especially her 2 children and nephew who grew up in Colombia. We've all suffered these many, many years because we lost Marina so early in life." And Martin spoke about his distress that his brother, who died in 2005, was not present to see the man who had killed Marina sent to prison. He said that his brother had suffered an increasingly rapid decline following the murder, saying, "The day Marina was murdered, I lost my brother." So there we have it, a man who murdered Marina as she worked in a non-planned attack. And as we finish today, we must feel for Marina's husband David, who sadly died before justice was done, and for his family, who saw his decline following the death of his wife. And we both know that as well as missing his wife, he would have faced a glare of publicity, and there would always have been people pointing the finger at him as a suspect in Marina's murder. And of course, we feel terribly sorry for Marina's family and friends, who went for so many years not knowing what had happened to someone who they love so much. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do press the subscribe button, and that keeps me producing this totally free content every single week. And if you found this video of interest, please do watch one of my others. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.